Take a look around me, taking pages from a magazine. Been looking for the answer ever since we were 17. You know, truth can be a weapon to fight this world of ill intentions. A new answer to the same question: how many times will you learn the same lesson? I think they got it all wrong. We just gotta hold on and on and on and on. 'Cause we're gonna be legends, gonna get their attention. What we're doing here ain't just scary, it's about to be legendary. Yeah, we're gonna be legends, gonna teach them all a lesson. Got this feeling in our souls we carry, it's about to be legendary. This is what we came for, and we couldn't want it anymore. Could never turn back now, gotta leave it all on the floor. We're dreaming of the payoff, through the struggles and the trade-offs. Right in truth, heading on the way up. Tell them the truth, but they think it's just made up. I think they got it all wrong. We just gotta hold on and on and on and on. 'Cause we're gonna be legends, gonna get their attention. What we're doing here ain't just scary, it's about to be legendary. Yeah, we're gonna be legends, gonna teach them all a lesson. Got this feeling in our souls we carry, it's about to be legendary. Eventually they're gonna know who's right. To make a stand you gotta win the fight. Can't stand the heat and just stay out the light. You may never make it out alive. You gotta recognize the warning signs. Let everybody hear your battle cry. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we're gonna be legends, gonna get their attention. What we're doing here ain't just scary, it's about to be legendary. Yeah, we're gonna be legends, gonna teach them all a lesson. Got this feeling in our souls we carry, it's about to be legendary. Yeah.
Welcome to LCBC. It's so great to be with you today. Why don't you stand to your feet and we're going to sing together. Come on. You alone are the healer for the hurting. You alone are the refuge for the broken.
our hands going. Come on, like this. Here we go. Together, we join together with the saints, heaven's chorus. Now I praise. We sing to the one and only, our God who saves. We sing to the one that's worthy. Your name, God gave His Son. His death was mercy. Now death is done. It's our hope, resurrected. Christ proclaimed, sin defeated by His name. We sing to the one and only, our God who saves. We sing to the one that's worthy. We lift your name. We sing to the one and only, our God who saves. We sing to the one that's worthy. We lift your name. Oh. For your power, for your glory, and all the ways that you are holy, for your honor and all your fame, Jesus, we lift your name. For your power and for your glory, and all the ways that you are holy, for your honor and all your fame, the name above all names. We hear you sing it loud this morning. Lift your voice. We sing to the one and only. We sing to the one and only, our God who saves. We sing to the one that's worthy. We lift your name, Jesus, your holy name. Like the rushing wind, would you breathe within my heart, And through the raging storm, would you hold me in your arms, 'Cause I need you. How I need you. I need your love like I need water. I need your love like I need breath inside my lungs, burning my heart just like a fire. Come and take me over. Jesus, draw me closer to your heart. I can hear you call my name. When the nights get rough, I will still sing out your praise. 'Cause I need you. How I need you. Oh, I need your love like I need water. I need your love like I need breath inside my lungs, burning my heart just like a fire. Come and take me over. Jesus, draw me closer to your heart, to your heart, to your heart. Closer than my every breath, closer than my every step, closer than the song I sing, closer than anything, closer than my every breath, closer than my every step, closer than the song I sing, closer than anything. I need your love like I need water. I need your love like I need breath inside my lungs, burning my heart just like a fire. Come and take me over. Jesus, draw me closer. I need your love like I need water. I need your love like I need breath inside my lungs, burning my heart just like a fire. Come and take me over. Jesus, draw me closer to your heart, to your heart, to your heart. Jesus, to your heart, to your heart. Come and take me over. Jesus, draw me closer to your heart. To your heart. How we need you, Jesus. As I look across this room, I realize we have many different backgrounds, many different stories, different burdens that each of us are carrying today. But we have one thing in common. And that's we all need Jesus to step into our story. We need him to step in and do something miraculous for us. Maybe that's trusting him for the first time. Maybe that's a break from addiction, or help with our marriage or relationships or work. I don't know what it is for you, but I want you to think about that one thing right now that you need God to do for you. You need him to show up and show him, to show you that he's there, that he's with you. Seek him right now. Take a moment and just talk to him. It's amazing, God, that out of all of your creation, all of your power, everything you've made, the earth and everything in it, you value us the most. You call us your children, your sons, your daughters. And I know as a dad, when my kids bring their worries to me, there's nothing I want more than to sit with them and hear what's on their heart. I thank you that you hear us today, that you're actively involved in our lives, even when we can't feel it or see it. We thank you that you are constant, that you are there. I pray for each of these stories today, whatever it is that they needed from you. Pray that they would sense that you are there, that you are walking through this journey with them. And it may not be easy. Things may not look the way that we want to, but you are there. You are faithful. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. And it was amazing singing, worshiping with you guys together today. My name is Matt. Why don't you take a moment, say your name to 2 or 3 people around you, get to know them, then you can have a seat.
Well, hey everyone, welcome to LCBC. So glad you're here with us today. Hope you're feeling good after the extra hour of sleep last night, right? Last gathering, there was a whole group over here that clapped for sleep. You guys get more sleep, apparently. So, okay, we got some clap for sleep. It's great. Hey, so glad you're here with us. If you don't know much about LCBC, we're just a group of people whose lives have been changed by Christ. We are not a group of perfect people, all right? We're actually really far from it. We don't have life all figured out. But we know a God who offers us hope and who wants us to have life to the fullest. And so that's why we get together each and every week. And when we do get together, we would love to know that you're here. So do me a favor. Get your program out right now. Open up to the first page that says About You there and fill out that information for us. Please, please, please do that. Honestly, this is a way for us to connect with you, to know what's going on in your life. This is a way for us to make a big church feel small. And so please fill that out and let us know that you're here today. When you're done filling it out, hang on to it. In just a second, the ushers are going to come. They'll send a basket down your row. You can drop your About You card in the basket. And while that basket is being passed, that's also our chance this morning to bring gifts to God, to say, God, I love you. God, I trust you, and I want to show that I trust you by bringing you the first part of my income. And so if you haven't already done that online, you can take that opportunity as the basket heads down your row. All right, check this out. I did something crazy for me this week. First up, how many of us have cell phones out there? We have cell phones? Yeah, you're like, yes, of course. We all have cell phones, Ryan. Everyone's got a cell phone. Okay, so here's what I did this week that was crazy for me. I changed cell phone companies. Everyone says, yeah, right? Well, you're thinking in your head, it's not a big deal, Ryan. It's not crazy. Here's why it was for me, all right? I had the same cell phone company my whole cell phone career, all right? This is how long I've had it. You remember when flip phones were the phone? Since before flip phones, the phones before flip phones. That's how long I've had this cell phone company, like 17 years or whatever. And so I'm with a new company. I've got a new plan. And honestly, I'm a little nervous about it, right? I don't know what to expect. I don't know if the service is going to work for me. I've got a little anxiousness around it. You guys ever had an experience like that? Where you jumped into something, you didn't know what to expect, you didn't know if it was going to work out for you? I know some of you feel that about church. right? You even feel that right now in the seat you're sitting in, the same exact thing. Because of that, we've created an environment specifically for you called Newcomers. It's a place where you can come and learn the expectations, where you can come and you can find your bearings, a place where you can figure out how to navigate a large church like ours. It's a place where you can come and hear why we exist as a church, why we do the things we do, what's our heartbeat, what's our mission and vision, and we get to connect with you in that time as well. And so here's the deal. If you've never been to Newcomers, make it a priority. Maybe even make the decision right now to join us for the next one. Check the box on the program. Sign up at lcbcchurch.com. We'll see you at the next Newcomers. All right, if you've been with us the last few weeks here at LCBC, you've heard us talk about this initiative we're in the midst of called One Life. And essentially what we're saying is we want to continue to introduce more and more people to Jesus all over the state of Pennsylvania, one life at a time. And I just want to remind you, now is the time for us to be making commitments. And so would love for you to get one of these cards. If you haven't already, stop by our Next Steps area, stop by our info booth. Get one of these cards. Even fill it out today, right now even, before you leave, drop it off. But what I'll say is, join in what God is doing. Don't sit this one out. Join in, and can't wait to see the potential, the future of One Life. Last thing real quick, next week we're going to be celebrating Veterans Day as a church, and so if you're a veteran, if you've served in the past, we would love to have you back next week. If you know someone who has served in our armed forces and who doesn't attend LCBC, invite them. We would love to take a chance to honor them and to say thank you to all those who have served for our country. And oh, by the way, if the weekend doesn't work, we have Monday gatherings. Yes, they've been going awesome in the West Wing Auditorium. I just talked to the lady a few weeks back, and she said, thank you so much for doing weeknight gatherings. She said, because of my work schedule, it's been so hard for me for the last few years to get to church. And now she's been able to be here consistently the last few weeks. So come check us out. Join us Monday evening in the West Wing. Excited you're here with us today. We're launching into a new series, Be Rich. Let's check it out together and check out the screens.
Who we are as followers of Jesus doesn't depend on our social status.
It doesn't depend on our net worth. It doesn't depend on our inner circle.
We are called to love, to help where help is needed,
To defend those who can't defend themselves.
to go into a world that's hurting and offer hope.
That kind of love never falters.
It never fades.
It never fails.
We are compelled to show compassion through our actions and be rich in the way we love.
So glad you guys are here with us for week one of Be Rich. And you just got to know that November has, for us as a church, November has become one of our most favorite months of the year. And not just because it is now legal to play Christmas music. Do not lie. Real quick, how many of you guys, the moment it hit November 1st, you started playing Christmas music? Okay, look around all of our locations. Pray for these people, please. All right? Because that ain't right. I'm just saying. So, now, in all seriousness, November has become one of our most favorite seasons of the year because for the last couple of years, if you've been a part of things, and you know we don't have a ton of traditions here at our church, but one of the traditions we've kind of found ourselves falling into is we enter into a season where we just want to unleash generosity on our communities. We want to unleash a flood of good works. And so the whole idea behind Be Rich, you know, it's way more than a teaching series. Be Rich for us is an initiative, and it's actually rooted in the scriptures from this one passage in the Bible that says to be rich in good works. So this is about us as a church trying to be rich in good works, about us trying to go and to unleash a flood of good works on those who are in need in all the communities around all of our locations right now. What's real cool, too, is that it's not just us. We're partnering up and we're teaming up with churches all across the country who are committed over the next several weeks and in the weeks to come to saying, man, we are going to do whatever we can to unleash generosity, to help those who are in need, to help those who are under-resourced in the communities around us. And man, it's just been so much fun to see what God has done. And let me just kind of tell you our approach as a church before we move on here. I want to tell you kind of how we approach Be Rich and how we approach as a church, philosophically, how we invest into our communities and how we do that. We made a decision a while ago as a church that we were not going to be competitors to the local nonprofit organizations that are already doing incredible work in our communities. And so this is why you will not find on any of our locations, you won't find a food pantry at our church. You won't find at any of our locations educational programs that are going on during the week. You won't find at any of our locations transitional housing. And the reason why is because there are nonprofit organizations that are already doing all of those things, and they are doing them extraordinarily well. And so we as a church don't want to be a competitor to them. We want to be a partner to them. We want to come alongside and say, man, you're already doing an incredible job. We as a church want to come along and help you do what you already do well, do it even better. And so that's our philosophy, and that's how we approach it. And we've had teams on all of our locations out over the last months now, last 6 months, who've been working with local nonprofit partners and vetting these organizations and saying, how can we help you? And so I am so thrilled to tell you that for the very first time, this is so exciting, for the very first time, we have over 100 nonprofit organizations that we are partnering with through this year's Be Rich initiative across all of our locations. And let me just tell you, because I want to give you a snapshot, and then we'll move on, all right? I just want to give you a snapshot about what you have done through our Be Rich initiative over the last couple of years since we started this, because this is an amazing story to tell. This is what you've done. This is what our church has done over the last several years. Over the last several years through Be Rich, you've served 17,603 hours. You've given that much time to our partner organizations who are helping those who are most in need around our locations. You've given 24,072 shoe boxes that have been packed up. We're partnering with Operation Christmas Child, and they go out to children all over the world. Just through our Be Rich initiative over the last couple of years, we sponsored an additional 1,687 children through our partner organizations that are all over the world helping children in need. That's in addition to the children who are already sponsored. And so that brings the total number of children sponsored here at our church to right around 4,000 kids. So that's all just happened in the last few years. And what's crazy is when you take all of that together and you consider the cash gifts that you've given, when you consider and you monetize, these gifts and the sponsorships and all that, over the last few years, this is crazy. Our church has given away $3.3 million worth of resources into the communities, none of it going to our church, all given away to help those who are in need. I don't know why you're not clapping, because I'm gonna clap for that, because I think that's absolutely amazing. Man, I'm telling you, that's not normal, and that's you. That's your willingness, that's your generosity that's making a difference in that way. And I just want to tell you out front, so as we kind of start this Be Rich initiative here, and we're going to be talking about this over the next couple weeks, I'm going to put all the cards on the table, so that way, a couple weeks from now, you can't come back and be like, man, you did a little bait and switch there. No, I'm going to tell you what our goal is. Our goal is 100% participation. That's the goal. We don't have a monetary goal. We don't have we're not trying to raise a certain amount of money. We don't have an hours served goal. We're not trying to get amount of hours served or anything like that. Our goal is a participation goal. In other words, we want to challenge you. I want to challenge you, for all of you, that there's going to be opportunities put in front of you over the next several weeks. Opportunities to give, opportunities to serve, opportunities to love, and it's going to stretch you. But there's going to be opportunities put in front of you that's going to stir your heart up a little bit. When you feel your heart stirred up, act on it. Just move. Just do something. Just participate in any way that you are able. So at the end of this, you can get back and be like, I was a part of that. I was a part of that. At whatever level you want to be a part of it. But just participate and be a part of it. And you know what's so cool? Here's one of the things I just love about Be Rich. You don't have to be a Christian to participate in this. You don't have to even believe any of this Jesus stuff. And I realize that some of you are here today and you're not a Christian yet. And you're kind of dipping your toes in, and maybe you're thinking about whether or not you want to be a Christian, and you're kind of trying to figure this whole thing out, but you wouldn't say that you have faith. Here's the great news. You can participate as well as anyone else. This isn't really just about a Christian thing. This is about anyone who wants to pour out generosity and love and help those who are in need. And so for you, if you're not here and you're like, faith is not a part of your life right now, here's what I'd say. Man, be a part of this. If your only motivation is just because you want to be a good citizen, you just want to be a good neighbor, that's good enough. Jump in for that reason alone. But if you're here today and you are a Christian, if you're here today and you would say that you are a life changed by Christ, then our motivation, your motivation, goes so much deeper than that we just want to be a good neighbor. We just want to be a good citizen. It's rooted in something that we believe to be fundamentally true about God and God's character and about how God relates to us. And so what I want to do over the next couple of minutes, I just want to talk about that with you. I want to explore kind of what our motivation is and why, if you are a Christian here today, why we take this so seriously and why it matters. In order to do that, I want to look at one small passage that was written by one of Jesus' very first followers. His name was John. And most people think that John was the youngest. When Jesus chose his 12 disciples, that John was probably the youngest of them all because he ended up living the longest. And so some scholars even think he was maybe 13, 14, 15 years old when Jesus called him to be a disciple, which for any of you who are serving in our student ministry environments right now, no matter where you are, that should give you hope and encouragement, right? That Jesus looks at a teenager and says, you have what it takes to follow me. Amen. And he looks at John and he says that, and John decides to follow. And years later, so now decades have gone by, and John is an old man. And John is writing some letters. He writes letters to this ragtag group of Christians who were living in the first century in the Roman Empire. And in these letters, he's instructing them about what it means to follow Jesus. And he's encouraging them about what it means to be rich in good works. And he wants them to understand. He wants them to know this is what it means to love. This is what it means to be rich in good works. And listen to how he starts this one passage in 1 John chapter 3. This is verse 16. He says, we know what real love is. If you're a follower of Jesus, you know what real love is because you've tasted it. Your heart has been transformed by it. We know what real love is because, why? Because Jesus gave up his life for us. John says, we've seen it, we've tasted it, we've been transformed by it if you are a follower of Jesus. And then ultimately, there are two incredibly powerful words that go hand in hand here when it comes to understanding what love is. And it's this word love and it's the word gave. Because have you ever thought about the reality that those two words, those two ideas are always tied together, love and giving? That love is always generous. That love is never stingy. That love continues to give and give and give and give. And John ties these two ideas, love and gave. He ties these two ideas intimately together. And part of, I think, what John wants to say is if you're serious about being rich in good works, if you're serious about loving the way and responding to others in love, then it starts with what do you fundamentally believe to be true about God? John says, man, our core conviction at the root of who we believe God is that God is generous, that God gives, that this is the way God's love expresses itself, that he gives and gives and gives and continues to give no matter what, and that is central to the Christian story that Jesus gave. And not because, by the way, not because Jesus had to, not because Jesus was forced to, not because he didn't do it begrudgingly. He didn't give for you because he was, like out of contempt, like, well, I'm Jesus, I guess I have to do this for these people. No, John says, no, he did it out of love. He wanted to because of his heart for you, because of his heart for me. John says, any discussion we're gonna have about what it means to be rich in good works, about what it means to love those who are marginalized, to love those who are on the outs, to love those who are in need. It has to start here. That ultimately God, at his core, is generous, most put on clear display through what Jesus Christ has done for us. And then it's like John says, but this has implications for how we live. This reality and this truth, it has implications for how it expresses itself in the way that we treat others and how we live. Look at what he says next. He says, so we, in other words, in light of that, in light of the generous love of God, in light of us receiving and tapping into that love, because of that, so we also ought to give up our lives for our brothers and sisters. Now, I don't know what your response is to this verse, but in some ways, that's, John takes it in a direction that I'm not sure I would have expected him to take it here. Because in some ways, I think what I would have thought John was going to say that in light of, we know what real love is because we've seen, we've tasted, we've experienced that Jesus gave up his life for us. And in some ways, I would have thought he would have said, so we also ought to give up our lives for Jesus. Or so we also ought to give up our lives and worship to God. or so we also ought to sacrifice all we have for God. But that's not what John says. John says, in light of the relentless, passionate, generous love of God that we have experienced, so we also ought to love, he doesn't say God, love others. Why? Because John knows that to love others is to love God. They're not separate realities. They're intimately tied together. That when we love others this way, we are in fact responding in love to God and what God has done for us. I wonder if in some ways that there's an echo, like John is echoing this one particular passage that he hits at when he gets at this particular, this statement right here that we all sought to love others in the way that we've been loved. It's almost like he's echoing a passage that he wrote about in John chapter 13. Because in John chapter 13, he was recording the night before Jesus died. And as he's recording the night before Jesus died, he talks about that him and Jesus is close to his followers. And John was in the room that night. They were in this small upper room. They shared a meal together. And Jesus knew that he was going to be dying the next day. And he wanted to bring his closest followers together and kind of leave them with some last impressions, some last parting words. Now, what would you say to your closest friends, your family, if you knew the next day was your last day? You can imagine how pressing that moment was for Jesus. You can imagine that every word mattered. And at one point, John tells us in John 13 that he pulls them in and says, I have a new commandment I want to give you. And I imagine the disciples leaning in, maybe nudging each other, be like, man, this is going to be good. This is it, like a new commandment. We've been walking with Jesus for years now. I thought we've heard everything he ever said, but he's about to leave us with something new. And he brings them in close, and they're on the edge of their seats, and you could probably hear a pin drop in that room. And he brings them in, and Jesus says, here's my new commandment. Love each other. Now, I know they didn't have game shows back then, but I would imagine that moment was like, like John and the disciples like, that's it? Love each other? I thought you said you had something new. Because we've heard that. We know the whole love each other thing, right? We know that. But Jesus is like, I'm not finished. And then he gives it a huge nuance. And he says, a new commandment I give to you. Love each other just as I have loved you. So you should love each other. That's a game changer. Jesus is saying, the same way that I have loved you, that's the way I want you to love. The kind of love that sacrifices again and again. The kind of love that perseveres no matter what happens. The kind of love that will take its lumps and keep coming back with grace. The kind of love that is indiscriminate. The kind of love that does not draw boundaries and lines between who's worthy and who's not worthy of your love. Because Jesus says everyone's worthy of it because they're created in God's image. Jesus says that kind of love. The kind of love that would be willing to go and give itself up for another. That kind of love. And you know what Jesus does here? So important. It's just such a powerful moment when he makes this statement. See, Jesus, in some ways, completely reframes that whole golden rule, which is, do to others as you would want them to do to you. Treat others like you want to be treated. Jesus blows that out of the water. It's almost like Jesus says, that whole golden rule, like treat others like you want to be treated? That's easy. I'm not talking about that anymore. Anyone can do that. What I'm talking about, if you're going to follow me, if you want to be rich in good works, if you want to love the way I'm talking about, here's what it'll mean. I don't want you to treat others like you want them to treat you. I want you to treat everyone like I've treated them. With unbounding, limitless love. No matter who they are, no matter what they've done. Are you willing to love like that? And he ties these two things together, about love for God and love for others. And I would imagine that John now, I don't know how many times he replayed that scene over and over and over and over and over and over again in his head. Because now it's been decades later when he writes these words to these Christians in 1 John. And it's like he's had time to process, and he's had time to think, and he's had time to reflect on what that means to love as Jesus loved. And it's almost like he comes back and says, I think what it just means, it means that Jesus gave up his life, so we also ought to give up our lives. Like the simplest form, like maybe at its root, at its core, it means that we give like Jesus gave. And I don't know how you read this, but when you read that he gave up his life, and so we also give up our lives. Maybe some of you are like, man, that's pretty intense, John. Like, slow your roll. That's intense. But I think it's interesting to consider that the word gave up can also be translated in other places as to lay aside, to lay down. Which ultimately, isn't that always at the root of love, that something is laid aside for the good of another? And I think part of what John is bringing up here is that what it means to love like this, if we're going to be rich in good works, it will mean that every now and then we need to find a way to lay aside what we hold valuable in order to bring value to someone else. That's love. When you lay aside something you hold valuable to bring value to someone else. And that can be in huge ways and that can be in small ways. That might mean you lay aside your agenda that you had for the afternoon because this person needs to talk. And so you lay aside your agenda and you listen. That's love. It might mean you lay aside your right to get back because you know what you could say, you know what they did, and you know how you could destroy their reputation, but you lay aside that right to get back. That's love. Anytime we lay aside what we hold valuable, we want in order to bring value to someone else and in their life. It's that willingness to continue to lay aside. And I think what John's getting at here? I think at the end, John is getting at this big idea. And it's an idea that we've talked about before. But man, I hope this truth gets burned into our hearts. Is that the most appropriate response to the extravagant love of God is to love others extravagantly. That will always be the most appropriate response. The most appropriate response always to the extravagant love of God is to love others extravagantly. John's saying, man, you want to be rich in good works? You want to love like this? It's going to mean you got to lay aside. You got to love others extravagantly and lay aside what you hold valuable to bring value to someone else's life. And I would imagine those first listeners of this letter, maybe they read these two verses and then maybe they read this and they're inspired by this, but I imagine at some point someone's like, okay, so how do we do that, John? What does that mean practically to lay aside? What does that mean? And John's like, glad you asked, because the very next sentence begins to unpack it really practically. This is what he says. He says, so if someone has enough money to live well and sees a brother or sister in need but shows no compassion, well, how can God's love be in that person? If someone has enough to live well and sees, it's almost like John says, you want to know what it means to lay aside what you hold valuable to bring value to someone else? Maybe we should just start by talking about our stuff. Let's just start there. That's a good starting point. About our money, our resources, and how we use that, and how we leverage that to help those who are in need. And I read this passage, to be honest with you, and I'm challenged at one level, but then at another level, I find a loophole in this that I kind of like. And the loophole in this is this phrase right here, enough money to live well. Because it is so easy, and it would be so easy for any of us to read this and go, well, that's not talking about me then. Because the enough money to live well is so subjective on how we define that. Would you agree? Like, what's enough for you might not be enough for me, and what's enough for me might not be enough for you. And so enough is completely subjective. And if we want to find a loophole, we can find it there. And the reason why defining what enough is for us is subjective is because we never compare whether or not what we have today is enough. We never compare whether enough is enough for today to 10 years ago, 15 years ago. We only compare it to 10 years from now where we want to be. We only compare whether or not we have enough to other people around us and where we want to be in the future. We never look back 15 years ago and say, do I have enough today based on what I had 15 years ago? Because think about 15 years ago. You remember that salary you made? It was enough then. You remember the car you drove? Some of you are like, unfortunately, yeah, right? Remember that? That was enough then. But isn't it interesting that enough then wouldn't be enough today? Do you know why? Because enough is like an appetite. And we all know how appetites work. When you feed an appetite, what happens to the appetite? Does it go away? No. An appetite grows. And the idea of enough grows and expands. And you know this with appetites if you have a high school or middle schooler in your home right now, because you can't keep that fridge stocked fast enough, right? It doesn't go away, it just grows and expands. And I think part of what John is doing here is he's giving a warning to any of us who want to be committed to being rich in good works, to loving in a way that we lay down what we hold valuable to bring value to someone else. I think he's giving a warning saying, be careful. Because wealth and stuff, it has side effects. And it's easy to slip into this idea and this thought that if we just had a little bit more, then we'd have enough. Because that appetite keeps growing. Let me just throw some stats though. I'm not trying to hate on anyone. I'm just like, this will help us get an idea of kind of where we are. You know that if you make right around $40,000 a year, somewhere around there, you're in the top 1% of wage earners in this world, the planet. If you've ever walked into your closet that is full of clothes, open the door, turn on the light, done whatever, and you look at it and you go, oh, I have nothing to wear. Yes, some of you have done that. So have I. If you've ever done that, guess what? You probably have some margin. If you've ever found yourself waiting in line to get the latest mobile device, and while you're waiting in line for that new mobile device, you're posting on Instagram about you waiting in line for that new mobile device on your old mobile device, you probably have some discretionary income. Again, I'm not hating, I'm there with you as well. My point is simply this: John's words are just as relevant today as they ever have been. They're just as relevant today. And it's possible to slip into the mindset that we don't think we have enough. And when we keep feeding that appetite, and it grows and grows and grows, and we're never satisfied that we truly have enough, it will push out our capacity to live generously. And the reason why is because if we're not convinced we have enough, we will live with a scarcity mindset. You know what a scarcity mindset is? A scarcity mindset is the idea, it's a way of seeing the world in which you think that the world has a limited amount of goods and resources out there, and so it is my job to grab and take hold of and not share, because if I don't, no one else is going to take care of me. It's scarcity. And when we live with that scarcity mindset, we have forgotten that God, in his very nature, is generous, and that God will always give us what we need when we provide for those who are in need. Always. So I think maybe one of the most pressing questions for any of us who want to be rich in good works, and who take John's warning here seriously, I think one of the most pressing questions we can ask is simply this: is enough for me? Is enough truly enough for me? Or will I always push for more? Or will I be satisfied that God's given me enough and I can create some margin to give, to set aside, to lay aside something I hold valuable to bring value to another, which ultimately is what love is. I think John is doing something actually so important here. I think John is pushing the conversation. Just think about these we've looked at 3 sentences. And those are just packed with implications about what it means to love others. And in some ways, what John is doing is he is pushing the conversation about what it means to love so much further than just feelings and sentiment. And that love is not something, it's not an ideal to strive for. That love is not something necessarily that you just feel, but John is saying love at its core is action. The love at its core is something we do for others. Love takes on flesh and blood. It lives. It expresses itself in the way we treat others, in the way that we give for others, in the way that we lay aside something we hold valuable to bring value to others. He's pushing the conversation about love forward. He's advancing it, which is why I think this very last verse that he says in this passage is so powerful. He says, so dear children, this is the very next sentence. He says, so dear children, let's not merely say that we love each other. Let's show the truth by our actions. Let's not merely just talk about it. Let's not merely let it be something, a great ideal. Let's not let it be something that's just a great sentimentality. Let's do something with it. Let's move. You know what I find fascinating? Is that there's two words that bookend this passage that are just, they're so incredible. Remember how verse 16, you might not remember this, but here's how it started. It says, remember John said, we know what real love is. Remember he started with that word know? And isn't it interesting that he ends this passage with the word show? That there's a movement from what we know about love to the kind of love we're willing to show others. And that it's possible to just keep love about something that we know or maybe that we feel. And John's saying, man, don't keep it there. Because the movement, if you're a follower of Jesus, the movement, when it comes to being rich in good works and how we love others, the movement is always from what we know to what we show. Always. It was never intended to just stay in our heads to be a concept that we just think about and ruminate on, but rather it is something we show. I played sports all growing up. You know, when I was a kid and into high school, I even played some basketball in college. And so it was just kind of sports was a big part of our family and growing up. And on every team, I played basketball and football, and on every team I ever played on, doesn't matter where it was, there would always be, or if I was at the playground, playing or whatever, there would always be people who before the game started or before, we were going to play a pickup game, they talk. And they would talk about what they're going to do, and they would talk about how they're going to destroy you, and they were talking about that you're weak, and they would talk about all this kind of stuff. And then you get on the court, and nothing. Or they would talk about all they could do. They would know everything about the game, and yet they would never play. And you know what we used to say about those people? Maybe if you grew up playing sports, maybe you said something like this too. We'd always say, oh, that person, yeah, they talk a good game. They talk a real good game, but they're not willing to play. They're not willing to hustle. They're not willing to get in there. They're not willing to grind. They're not willing to put in the effort, but they talk a good game. And you know what I think John is saying here to us? When it comes to being rich in good works, when it comes to loving in a way that you lay aside what you hold valuable to bring value to someone else, I think John is saying, do not talk a good game on this one. Don't just talk a good game. You can't afford to talk a good game on this one. We've got to play. We've got to move from what we know to what we show to others. Don't just talk a good game on this one, but get out there and do something with it. Do you know that this is what set those very first Christians apart from everyone else around them in their community? And still today, it is the defining mark of the church. That what set those first Christians apart, it wasn't what they knew. It wasn't really even what they believed. Some people thought they were just crazy for what they believed. But the one thing that people could not get around and get over is that those were some of the most loving people they'd ever seen. And they were willing to love those who were under-resourced, and they were willing to love those who were marginalized, and they were willing to love those who no one else would love. They were willing to show. They were willing to put that love into action, to not just merely say that we love each other, but dear children, please show the truth by their action. And it happened. And it is what set them apart. And it is the same today. That when it's working right, it is our love that will set us apart. You know, a couple weeks ago, this guy, actually it was a couple of months ago now, this guy came into our church for the very first time. Never been here. And he went through the whole experience. He did the gathering, and then he hung out in the atrium, and he talked to people, and he just watched what was going on. And I think he was kind of blown away by the whole experience. And someone asked him, hey, so, at the very end, as he's walking out, they're like, hey, so how was your experience today? Did you have a good experience at our church and all this kind of stuff? And do you know what he did not say? He did not talk about the music. The music's incredible. But he didn't talk about that. He didn't talk about the preaching. Preaching, probably incredible that day, right? But he didn't talk about the preaching. And he didn't talk about the building. Our building's incredible. He didn't talk about any of that. Do you want to know what he said? He said a statement that I think may be the greatest compliment our church has ever received, ever received. This is the one sentence he said about our church. He said, "Your love is easy to see." That makes me so proud to be a part of a church where your love is easy to see. That we want to be a group of people who lock arms together and say, "Man, we're not going to talk a good game. We want our love to be easy to see." And while I can't imagine a better compliment to be given to our church, I also can't imagine a better statement to be made about you at the end of your days. Think about it a second. Don't you want that said about you at the end of your days? Don't you want your family, your friends, your coworkers, the people closest to you, don't you want them to be able to say that about you? That your love is easy to see. This is not even a Christian thing. This is not even a faith thing. This is just, wouldn't that be incredible to have that said about you, to live life in such a way where that could be said about you? But if you're here and you're a Christian, let me just tell you this. You know what you believe? You believe that one day you're going to stand in front of your Savior, Jesus. You're going to stand in front of him eye to eye, the same Savior who gave up his life for you. And how incredible would that be? For on that day, when you stand eye to eye with your Savior, the one who gave it all, for him to look into your eyes and say, "Well done, your love was easy to see." Man, I want that to be said about you. I want that to be said about us. That's why we do Be Rich. Because we just want our love to be easy to see. Why? Because the most appropriate response to the extravagant love of God is to love others extravagantly. So, it starts today. It starts today, and I already told you, we're going to put opportunities in front of you about how we can be a part of this. And so the first opportunity I want to put in front of you to respond with extravagant love, I'm just going to invite you to give today. I'm going to ask you to give money because here's the thing. We want to pour out money. We want to just pour out a ton of money on our partner organizations that are doing incredible work in our communities. That's our goal. We want to give them as much money as we possibly can muster up. And so what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you today to give a one-time gift. Not going to ask you again. It's just a one-time gift, And every penny of your gift for Be Rich today, every penny goes to our partner organizations. Not one penny is going to our church. None of them. We're giving it all away. There's no administrative, overhead costs or anything like that. It is completely 100% going to our partner organizations to help them do what they already do in meeting needs, do it even better. So I'm going to ask you to give today. And if you're sitting there and you're sitting there going, "Man, I want to give and I don't, I'm inspired by this. I want to be a part of this, at some level," then here's what I'd say. If you need a starting point, if you've been a part of Be Rich, then this is kind of tradition for us. It's really cheesy, but if you need a starting point, you don't know where to, what to give, whatever, I'm going to give you a starting point, and you can just take it from there. And it is really cheesy, but whatever, it helps. Start with just $39.95. Can you give $39.95? Now, anytime you say that, you got to say that like a salesman at night or something like on a TV show, right? And for some reason, you got to say it with a southern accent. $39.95. All right. So I'm going to ask you right now in all of our locations. I just want you to say your best $39.95. Ready? 1, 2, 3. $39.95. Woo, you guys are kind of good. You could be on a late night infomercial. Nice. $39.95. Now, here's the thing. Remember, our goal is a participation goal. So I realize some of you are like, "Man, I don't know if I can." That's fine. Just get on the board. Just participate, right? So, but if you need a starting point, this is a good starting point. Now, here's what I know. I know that for some of us here today, we were going to spend that on a meal today or tomorrow. So would you be willing to eat leftovers and just give that instead? And I also know that for some of us, me included on this one, we were going to spend that on coffee this week. So would you be willing for a week to just do water, right? If you need to think of creative ways to get there. So $39.95. Here's the other thing. I also know that for some of you, you can add a number in front of that $39.95, and that's what you can give. And I know that for some of you, you can add 2 numbers in front of that $39.95. And every penny of that is going to be given to help our partner organizations do what they do even better. I want to give you a sense of what has happened and what we've been a part of and what you've done and provided, because I think this gives you a sense of how your money is going to be used. So this is last year. This is through your generosity through Be Rich last year and the money we gave away. Last year, there's a partner, one of our partner organizations provides free health care. It provides free physicals. It helps families, clinical visits for families who do not have insurance and who are incredibly under-resourced, and it provides free medical care for these families. And they needed a lot. Their lobby was a mess, and they needed help. They couldn't afford it, and we were able to go, and we gave them a check, and we said, get this lobby redone. And that got them off the ground. Last year, we actually went. There's one of our partner organizations partners with families who are in dire straits economically, and so their kids in these families, their kids are getting healthy, nutritious meals throughout the week, but during the weekend, they don't have much food. And so we were able to go to this organization of partners with these families, and you gave them, because of your generosity, you gave them $9,000. And that funded for an entire year, 150 families now have food through the entire weekend because of your generosity. Last year, one of our partner organizations, I love this one. One of our partner organizations takes in ex-inmates and gives them a second chance. Which, by the way, isn't that, if you're a Christian and you can't get behind the idea of second chances, you've missed the plot. Because we've all been given second chances. And so this organization works with ex-inmates who want a second chance. We're going to give you a second chance. We're going to help you get back on your feet. And so they actually have this transitional house. It was a shell of a house. They didn't really have much they didn't have this program off the ground. We went because of your generosity, and we gave them $22,000. We said, get this house clean, get it ready. Let's do something for these, because these people deserve second chances. Last year, you were able, because of your generosity, we gave $8,500 to one of our partner organizations that works and takes in young girls, young women who have been sex trafficked. And they take them in, and they give them care, and they give them love, and they say, man, you have value beyond what you know, because there's a God who loves you. And they needed a safe place for these girls, and your money, that $8,500, we said, get this place up and running. Let's do something with this. And the last one I'll just tell you about, and there were so many more. Last one I'll tell you about is that one of our partner organizations provides physical and occupation and speech language therapy to children who have disabilities. And their programs have been limited to a certain age range, and they've wanted so long to start giving care for infants that have disabilities, but they haven't been able to because they haven't been able to fund that. But last year, because of your generosity, we went and we gave them $20,000. We said, get that program off the ground. And they got that new program off the ground, and they are now working with infants, day one, who have disabilities to help them thrive. That's because of you and your generosity. And we are not done. We have so much more to do. So if you want to give and be a part of this today, it's really simple. On the way out today at all of our locations, you'll see in the atriums, you'll see white balloons. Wherever you see white balloons, take your credit card, check card, debit card, whatever, and go there, and you can give that way. If you have cash or check and you want to give that way, that's fine. We actually have envelopes in all your programs, no matter what campus you're on right now or location. So you can grab that, or you can take cash. Go to the green balloons, and you can drop it in there. And then the easiest way, actually, is probably just web stuff. And so you can go to the LCBC app, you can go to the website, or you can text. This is really simple. This is how Jenny and I gave earlier. So kind of simple. You can just text LCBC Be Rich to 77977. It literally took me 45 seconds maybe. So you can do that even now, but just text it to that number there. There's so much good to do. There's so much good to do. And I can't wait to see how God uses a group of people who are willing to lay aside what we hold valuable to bring value to others. So may you go from here, and may you be rich in good works, and may your love be easy to see. Have a great week. We'll see you next weekend.